We are live. Welcome, everybody. I'm Nina Ignazik. I'm the founder and editor of Planet Detroit, and we are here with some amazing guests today to talk about consumerism, waste, and the holidays. And as we were in our green room, we realized that you might think about the Grinch when we're talking about consumerism and waste and trying to cut down, and maybe the Grinch being misunderstood. But we think it's more than that. So we're going to dive in and listen to some experts on how we can think about having a great holiday with all of the love and care that we want to, but maybe thinking a little bit about our environmental impact. So to do that today, I'm joined with Tessa Bensiger of Walking Lightly in Ferndale, Danielle Todd of the nonprofit Make Food Not Waste, and Ange Ademiak of my favorite place to go find random stuff, Arts and Scraps on the East Side. So we really appreciate our panelists and giving their time to be here today, and we're going to hear more from them. But before we do that, we're just going to go through a little bit of statistics to kind of ground us in what we're really talking about when we're talking about holiday waste. So we know that we do produce more waste during the holidays. We produce more trash, about 25% more trash during these sort of 2 months-ish between Thanksgiving and New Year is produced by American households during this time. We also know that about a pound of food is wasted per person on Thanksgiving, and that's unfortunate because landfills are already the country's third biggest source of the greenhouse gas methane. So the holidays do add to that. We know that online shopping, which guilty, is generating about almost 5 times more packaging waste than in-store purchases. And it all adds up to not be so great for our planet, and especially not so great for Michigan, where our landfills are already producing more methane emissions than most other states. In fact, we're among the top 10 states contributing to methane pollution from landfills. So today we've got 3 experts on this topic. They are all working in different ways to focus on keeping waste out of landfills. They do this through reducing packaging, reusing materials, and preventing food waste. And we're going to get started by talking about the problems that each of them aim to address. But we're also going to be pausing, so we don't want this to make this all just theoretical information. We want to give you tips and ideas that you can implement. And so we're going to ask each of our panelists to give us some tips throughout this seminar today. So first up, Danielle, Make Food Not Waste. So we know food waste is a huge contributor to methane emissions. So tell us one brief tip that our audience could easily implement today to fight methane emissions through food waste.
Yeah, I tried to get a little creative with my first tip here, and I'm going to go with considering if your guests are on Ozempic, because we saw that a little, not to out anyone in our family, but we saw that a little bit for Thanksgiving this year. We were like, people weren't really eating as much this year. So my tip is don't be afraid to make your portion sizes a little bit smaller. If you're used to making the giant green beans or the giant serving of mashed potatoes, be comfortable cutting down on that a little bit. You might have some people that aren't going to get through it as much as they have in years past.
Interesting. I did not encounter that in my Thanksgiving, but I don't know. I didn't ask everybody.
Not to out anyone, but just.
All right, thanks, Danielle. So let's get into the bigger issues you're each trying to address with your organization. So Tessa, Walking Lightly is a zero waste store and refillery. What does zero waste mean?
Well, it is, I mean, quite honestly, it is a little bit of a misnomer. And to be honest, it really is more of a low waste. And I would change the name, but we sure do need the like algorithm recognition. But really what it is not about like creating no waste at all, but it's about just a mindset shift to being more aware of our consumption habits and the impact of those on the environment and other humans, and just working to reduce our own personal carbon footprint through using less, wasting less, and just relying on all of those other R's a bit more. and that our individual impacts collectively can add up to a pretty large collective change.
Got it. And
And
those
about being
are,
very imperfect. So
yes.
the low waste kind of factors into imperfect environmentalism.
Yeah, it's hard to be perfect. I think you start realizing that as you get to be older. So, Danielle, we talked about food waste being a big source of methane emissions that everybody in the world contributes to because we all need food to live. We can't just stop eating food. How did you decide to take this particular issue on as your burden to address?
Yeah, I love the issue of food waste reduction so much because it is the best solution to climate change. It's tangible, it's easy to do, it's as simple as not throwing your food in the garbage. So uh, it's a lot of times it saves people money. It's not something you have to invest in, and it's something we can easily all do every day and feel that and know that every time we keep food out of landfills, we're immediately keeping methane out of the environment. So I love it because it's so meaningful to work on. And also I love talking with people about it because it's something really easy for them to do as well.
It may sound easy, but I find it challenging. I feel like I can never quite get my shopping to line up with my needs. So we'll talk about some more tips on that later.
For sure.
Yeah. So, and you're taking a different tack. You promote sustainability within the creative space. How did you identify a need there?
Yeah, our founder director was a teacher actually, and so she started to identify materials that she could reuse in her classroom 35 years ago. We've been around for 35 years, and started kind of like a teacher resource store, but very quickly it turned to artists and small business owners and families, and then really anybody and everybody. It's a huge community now of people, thousands. Last year, I think we had over 8,000 people come to the store over the year. And what we found is that now, as we're asking for donations, sometimes it gets a little dicey about ask for what we need, because it's really like, what can be useful to the community that we can reuse?
Right.
And we try and keep it as close to creative reuse as possible. But sometimes it's like, well, we're not going to turn away, walkers when we know people that need walkers.
People need them. So you're actually collecting other things besides just creative.
Yeah,
materials.
it's really it came from and is still about community and what the community is need.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, before we go on to our next section, it is Tessa's turn. Tessa, what's a sustainable practice that our audience can implement to help reduce waste during the holidays?
One of my favorites is gifting experiences over gifting things, and we have no shortage of wonderful classes that you can take, or memberships to the zoo if there's like a young family, or even like dinners out, or tickets to the movie. I mean, those are, and then we're spending quality time, which is what we really all want at this time of year anyway. So
right. So maybe we'll get to this at the end, but I'm just going to plant a seed. We did this actually for my son. We got him a gift certificate to a restaurant. Maybe we can think a little bit about how to make that as green as possible and avoid food waste, because I know the restaurant industry is not always the best with that. But before we do that, Tessa, thanks for that. And now we're going to jump into the challenges that each of you have navigated towards working towards your mission. Ange, back to you. Tell us what the business model is with Arts and Scraps and some of the barriers that you've had to overcome.
Sure. There's two main parts of Arts and Scraps. So we have our creative reuse store, which we already talked about a little bit. And there are creative reuse stores all over the state, all over the country. And what we found very early on, because we were started by a teacher, is that we started teaching classes with that. And we didn't really have language for it at the time, but now we know we're really teaching STEM education through creativity. And so the second part of what we do are those educational classes. And truly the business model, they have to go together in order for both to survive. But all of our recycled materials also fuel all of our programming. And so students get this really cool experience with STEM education and creativity all through creative reuse materials. And those two pieces have come together to form a sustainable business. It's pretty rare to find a nonprofit that has like 50% earned income.
Yeah, that's
Arts and
amazing. I
Crafts
would love to
has
figure that
always,
out.
yeah, it's always been that way for us, because
Yeah.
those educational components not only help us, educate students, but it also feeds back into that whole community aspect. We are out in the community consistently and gaining that feedback, that live, what the needs are out there, whether it's programming or stuff or whatever it is. And so being so ingrained in the community for 35 years has really kind of fueled all of that to be successful.
Yeah, it is a really cool business. And unfortunately, I think I've only been in the store one time, but I was just blown away by just the variety of cool stuff that you've got in there. How did you go about building, and how do you sustain that inventory? Because I'm sure like it just all changes all the time.
Yes, it definitely does change all the time. We have about 200 businesses that donate to us each year, and most of them are on like a weekly, monthly, or quarterly basis. But then we have thousands and thousands of individuals, and we always joke at Arts and Scraps that in a perfect world we could order garbage, but since we can't, we work with about 5,000 volunteers to help us organize it all. And so there's only 20 staff members, but usually between 3,000 and 5,000 volunteers a year to help us maintain all of that and keep it all organized and clean and safe and all those different things. And then really it is those craft materials, anything that's used in a creative capacity, but it is also industrial cast-offs and things like that. Adults sometimes struggle to use those things, but students do not. Their brains are so open that, those things that we maybe would never think on how to use them. Students have taught us many, many times over the years how to reuse materials that we never would have figured out how to use on our own. So, in fact, most of our most popular materials for our programming are based on things that like 7 and 8-year-olds taught us, just being out and letting them use the materials, and they use it in some cool way. And we're like, oh my gosh, why aren't we doing that? So it's been really, it takes the whole community coming together, giving that feedback on what's needed and how we reuse things and things like that. Our staff are really talented about saying like, oh, you're looking for XYZ and we don't have that. Here's 3 other options that you can use instead. Or, hey, my goal is XYZ. Okay, here's some other ways you can get there and use these other weird materials that we have, because we can't order garbage. So we have to be really creative about how we can, work with the materials that we have.
So when you drive down the street and you see something like at the side of the road, are you always like throwing it in the back of your car?
No, but because we probably take 1% of the garbage that we are offered by companies and things like that, right? And so, like I always say, we're not a storage company; we're a creative reuse, right? And so we have to be really careful about taking too much material, because there is always more than we could possibly ever take. And so, that's not to say don't bring us your donations. Please bring us your donations, but as with every other business, the more money we have, the more we could be doing, right? And so we're limited by the amount of space we have, the amount of volunteers we can work with because of the amount of staff we have. So I will say almost every staff person, we have a constant conversation about like our cars are always full of people's scraps, because anytime I see someone,
I would imagine. That's exactly what I imagine.
A great problem to have, but yes.
Yes. And so speaking of experiences, I really do recommend, if you haven't been over to Arts and Scraps, just checking it out. And are classes available to the broader public, or do you have to be in a program to get into a class?
So we have educational programs after school at 14 of the Brilliant Detroit houses. So you can find that information on Brilliant Detroit's website and join us. The schedule is different for every hub. We have a free program the second Friday of every month called Creative Cafe. If you're a group that leads any kind of creative practice, you can come and host and share your practice with the community, and people come out and just create together. It's super, super fun. Or just come and hang out with us. It's become its own little community on its own. And then in 2025, we're actually going to be starting a free family drop-in for families on Saturday. So be watching for that information as that'll be coming soon. That's the number one request we got, was just like, can I just come with my kids and we can just hang out with other creative families? So we're starting that in 2025. We finally got it funded. So
super cool. Let us know. We'll help get the word out to our readers at Planet Detroit.
Awesome.
All right. Back to Tessa. Tessa, you said you started Walking Lightly because you couldn't find what you were looking for in terms of low waste products at stores. What was it like trying to find those things? Did they even exist? And tell us like some of the examples of what they are.
They did, but they were kind of hard to find. It was a slow rollout. So I started in 2019, and there were definitely a lot more limitations on choices.
So right before the pandemic. That's great.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And then just kind of kept going full steam ahead, as any, smart business person would do. And I knew right away that like one of the things I really wanted to hold tight with was working with suppliers who are closed loop, so that they take their containers back. So whether they ship to us in the containers that we dispense from, or a lot of folks will ship like shampoo or like hand and body wash in flexible plastic bags that we rinse, dry, send back, and then they have a process integrated for sanitizing. And I think when I first started, I kind of reached out to a lot of folks because people will gladly sell you in bulk, but having, like requesting the closed loop program, I definitely got a lot of no's. But, over time, then I realized like, okay, there are a limited number, at least in 2019, a very limited number of folks who were like already operating in this model. And it was kind of more on the coasts. But I mean, honestly, like the industry has exploded. But the thing about like kind of starting when it was kind of just, at least in the States, was new and just kind of burgeoning, is that, then you kind of develop those relationships with other small businesses. And it does tend to be small businesses that are willing, because of course there are a lot of like logistics for them to manage, storage, sanitation practices, things like that. And then we have to kind of be creative too with shipping costs going kind of berserk. And, but it just meant like developing those relationships. And a lot of the suppliers that we started with are still the suppliers we use today because of those relationships. And, if you had those values in 2019 and we kind of rode out this wave together, then there's definitely a lot of respect there.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I have not been into your physical store yet. I plan to change that very soon. On December 8th, we will talk more about that. But what will I, as a new customer coming in and not really knowing I want to stop wasting a bunch of stuff that I use at home, but not really knowing what will I see and like, what is the process like?
Yeah. So honestly, we've got most of the basics that you would need for home and body. So we kind of always tell people, if you're just starting, to avoid feeling overwhelmed with the process, like just start with one thing. Just find what you're out of and bring that container. So any containers to be refilled do need to be clean and dry. So just find what you're out of or low on, get a clean container and bring it in. We always have ones either for purchase, or we've got a community donation shelf that will sanitize containers. So you can always borrow one. But yeah, and then we get the empty weight of your container, and then you fill up however much or little of something that you like. And then when you come to the register and we weigh it again, we just subtract the weight of your empty container so that you're paying just for the product, which can be really nice if you're trying out something that, maybe you or someone else in your house feels a little particular about shampoo or laundry detergent, and that's kind of the nice thing of being able to buy in bulk. You don't have to buy a large container and then you're like, what do I do with this if I don't like it?
And so you come back to the store to refill every so often?
Yeah, and it's different for everybody. Some people, especially like our neighbors that are close by, like to pop in more regularly and just kind of wait till they're out of each thing. Folks that are a little farther away maybe come in once a month or once a quarter and just kind of fill up whatever container accordingly. And it really has been very fun to see how people have, the community has kind of grown with us, and as we've expanded what we have and kind of learned what works well for folks and what doesn't work well for folks, we've got to kind of see people make adjustments in their own home too, and what works for them, and that's kind of great too, because then we can share those stories with somebody who's just starting and like, well, this is what we hear works for people, or these are some challenges that people have, because it does look very different in everybody's home. And I think no matter what, it needs to work in a way that feels not like an extra task or burden, but something that feels like an action step and something that even feels a little bit joyful, because then we want to maintain it. And that's just true of, any time we're integrating change as humans, is that we don't want it to be burdensome or overwhelming.
And so these are mostly like liquid materials, like.
Oh, we try to have like a liquid refill and a solid option, which can be kind of package free for everything. Like we have liquid shampoo and shampoo bars, liquid dish soap, solid dish soap. We do have some teas, herbs, spices, dry goods, things like that too. And that way we're just kind of meeting people where they're at. I mean, the solids are kind of great because then you have no package, but some people are maybe not as comfortable with that, or just like what they like. So
yeah, I tried to get my husband on board
wherever you're at without
solid laundry bars, and he wasn't quite there yet. So we know during the holidays, packaging is a big issue. How do you deal with the packaging, especially with the online sales?
Yeah, so honestly, most of our sales, like probably 95% of our sales are in store.
Okay.
And then the majority of online orders are local delivery. So before we had the physical storefront, that was the model that we used, was just local delivery. And I would tell people it's like the milkman, it's just soap. And so we still do that with just like, we'll bring containers, drop them off. I'll take your empty ones off your porch. For the folks, and really that's intentional. Like we're not trying to reach a wider audience than the Metro Detroit area. So keeping it more local is intentional. And then for any shipping that we do, we don't ship liquids. I've seen a lot of challenges from that. So if we are shipping, we only use reusable, or we reuse the packages that we receive and any packing materials. And then we ship through the post office because they're coming to your doorstep every day anyway. So hopefully lowering a little bit of the carbon footprint there.
Got it. Okay, before we go on, and you're up, we would like a tip from you. How can people curb their impact on the environment during the holidays?
Well, I'm going to take a page out of Tessa's book because I love that the phrase she said of imperfect environmentalism. And my tip is actually to just pick one big thing each year you want to change, whether it's packaging or how you work with your tree or whatever it is. Just pick one new sustainability practice for each year, and those will grow over time. But you don't have to do everything. Maybe there's some things that feel lower lift for you, things like that, but it's such a stressful time. If you try and do it all, you're going to end up not being happy with you're not going to end up being happy with the end result for you, your family, or your sustainability practices. So pick, one or two things that you think you want to do this year, and then focus on.
Yeah, it is time for New Year's resolutions. I wonder if we can do Planet Detroit New Year's resolution this year. And I would like to cut down on the packaging for sure. Hence my soon to visit to Walking Lily. Okay, so Danielle, Tessa and Andrew are providing a product or an experience, something you can like actively do or kind of change how you do things, but you're actually really talking about behavioral change. What does that look like when we're talking about reducing food waste?
Well, it's not easy. People like their habits and they hold on to them pretty tightly. Everyone has a different why. Some people choose to waste less food because they know that it's the right thing to do, or they know it's good for the environment. Some people do it to save money. Certainly true for businesses and municipalities, but the homeowner can save a lot of money. There's research that shows the average Michigander throws away $759 a year in food that they buy that they turn around and throw away.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's financial, but and sometimes, like what we see around the country in other states where they've implemented regulations and have said you just can't throw your food in the garbage. And sometimes people need a little bit of push from from a legal standpoint to make that happen. So it varies. Just like Tessa was saying, we also believe that it has to be something that's not burdensome and a little bit of fun. Certainly arts and scraps is fun. And, we talk to people a lot about repurposing their leftovers into something delicious, getting creative in your kitchen. But really it just comes down to food's just too important to throw away, and you can make some great things out of your scraps. And I know that I'm going to be trying to figure out how to do that with my half bag of stuffing next.
Yeah, I'm curious. I didn't get any leftovers though this year, so I'm kind of sad about that.
Yeah.
So you actually do you actually part of your organization operates what you call upcycling kitchens. What is that, and what does that look like, and what have you learned through doing that?
Yeah. We have two kitchens in the city of Detroit. The first one opened in January of 21, and the second one opened in January of 23. We make about 100,000 meals a year across both kitchens. We take in unloved food that needs a little bit of love before it goes back out, is how we call it. So we have a team of professional chefs that transform this food into something incredibly delicious, food that just has nowhere really to go. It's a lot of times it's kind of not suitable for donation necessarily. It might be there's just too much of it, or it might be it's kind of like a little bit on its last leg. You think about an overripe banana that makes great banana bread, but someone has to make the banana bread. We're the ones that do that. So we have learned that there is a lot of food moving through the Metro Detroit area that is perfectly edible and usable, but needs to be cooked first. Someone needs to do something to it before it can be shared with the community. And that's really where the kitchens, how they came about, was realizing that there was a gap in the charitable food system. We also try to take in food items that people may not necessarily think are you can do anything with. So it might be, a steakhouse that has the meat trim from their steak that they cut off. That's they just trim the steak and they have this leftover pieces of it, and they can't really do anything with it. So we might take that in, and then the chefs will turn it into meatballs, or put it in with a stir fry. We take in dough scraps from pierogi makers, and the chefs turn it into noodles and dumplings. So it's really also a demonstration of the fact that there are a lot of things that we assume, like, well, what are you going to do with that? You can't really do anything with it. And as long as it's food and it's edible and you put some creativity to it, which our chefs, they're absolutely amazing what they do, can really turn it into something useful and delicious and keep it out of landfills. So the kitchens are super fun. If we do have volunteer opportunities, if anyone wants to come work alongside the chefs, we have those opportunities. You can also volunteer on our meal distribution days on Friday mornings. All that information is on our website, makefoodnotwaste.org, and you can check out the shifts, sign up directly on the website. It's super fun.
Great. We will be sharing that for sure. And I think what scares me and what I would like to maybe work with you on this year is like, it's great that a creative and trained chef can do this, but like, how can I do it? And I know we partnered at one point on a kind of a food waste email class. So yeah, I definitely need some help with figuring out, just like you said, what do I do with this stuffing? Because I really don't want it anymore.
Right.
Okay, so before we start getting into some more practical strategies, let's talk about impact. So, all of you have great options and programs and business models, but you're actually making an impact on this. So, Danielle, we'll start with you. What kind of impact has Make Food Not Waste made in terms of the impact on our landfills?
Yeah, we work at both in the short term and the long term. So the kitchens really are addressing that short term problem, which is there's food right in front of us that's going to waste. We have to do something with it. And we were able to divert about 100,000 pounds of food each year from landfills and the kitchens. I do expect that number is going to keep increasing as we scale. So that's sort of the direct, measurable, right away stuff. Then we work on long-term change because we know that just like Ange said, we can't possibly take in all of the surplus. There's just too much. It's 1 billion pounds or whatever it is. So we know that we need to put in some long-term kind of structural stuff to make those changes. And so our strategy there is to work with the big cities that are in Southeast Michigan. That's really where the bulk of the waste is occurring because that's where most of the people are. So more people mean more waste. And what we want to do is focus on those top populated cities and say, okay, how do we really shift that mindset around how much goes to waste? Teach people how they can, people like you, people who are like, well, I know how to cook, but I don't really know how to use up every last little bit, or I want to do better, but I need these skills. So working with individuals, with restaurants, with hotels, anyone who has a kitchen, basically, schools, institutions. And then how do we make sure that all of the commercial kitchens understand how to donate food safely and how they can prevent any sort of liability issues that people are concerned about? And then lastly, how do we put in recycling material or infrastructure for that food? So how do we make sure that it's accessible for people to compost directly from their curb, just like they throw out the rest of their trash? How do we make sure that restaurants have the accessibility to compost anything that's left over? So really putting in all of those things in place. It's not nearly as sexy as the kitchens. The kitchens are super cool. But the long-term stuff really matters because that's where you see big change happening.
And you are working with, I think there was some articles recently about Southfield as one of the cities you're working with on this.
So we started we're working with Southfield, and then we've also now just started working with Canton, Farmington Hills, Livonia, Westland, and Dearborn. So we're still the beginning stages of all of that, but Michigan has a goal of cutting food waste in half by 2030, and we're really trying.
As part of our climate plan, right?
As part of our climate plan, yeah. So we're trying to help make that happen.
Cool. All right. Okay, on to Tessa. Tessa, how do you measure your impact?
So, sort of anecdotally, we're, I think we kind of are measuring are we helping people if we kind of get good feedback on, resources that we share and tips, and are people excited to not only share their successes, but also, feeling comfortable to ask questions. Quantitatively, we are just kind of always gauging, are we reaching some new customers? And then we keep a tally of the number of refills. And so each month we kind of update our number. And so as of yesterday, we are at a little over 42,000 refills that
Wow.
our community has done. So,
that's
it's kind of great to be
42,000
able to
fewer containers, right?
What's that?
That's about 42,000 fewer containers that went into the landfill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that, and like we keep that number like displayed here. And I think part of that is being able to see that, yeah, it feels good on an individual level, but also it's kind of great to see that number and then visualize, like, as a community, look at what we've been able to do. So, right. Unfortunately, that number just keeps getting bigger quicker. So hopefully we'll continue with that trend.
Awesome. Okay. And Ange, how do you measure success?
There's a few different ways. One of the big pieces is how many pounds reused, tons, I should say. And typically we reuse 20 to 30 tons a year. One of the things I feel like we don't talk enough about is with reuse, that we've reduced the need for something to be created new when we reuse something. And so I don't know, I'm still trying to find like good ways to quantify that, because every material is so different. It's hard to figure out, and especially some of it just like wouldn't have necessarily a full 1-to-1 ratio of what it's replacing, right? But anyway, so 20 to 30 tons a year is reused. But then we work with thousands of individuals every year, both creating community for creatives to talk about how they're doing reuse in their practice, and then honestly creating thousands and thousands of future entrepreneurs and designers and things like that that have creative reuse as part of what they do with all the students that we work with. So we always talk about, like, we don't make art, we make artists. We don't make designs, we make designers, etc. And the same is true with environmentalism. I can't tell you how many times, I really can't tell you how many times I've had someone come up to me and say, like, you came to my second grade classroom 25 years ago and I still reuse because of blah, 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 or I still remember the lesson that I learned, and So there's this big impact just of like students having exposure to creative reuse, especially so early in their life, and getting that. We do an environmentalism lesson with every single lesson that we do, and so them getting that really early exposure to that.
Very cool. Yeah, I would be measuring like 7-year-old smiles if I was in your line of work.
Exactly.
All right, we have a lot of audience questions, which we're excited to get to, but first we're going to go through and get the rest of your tips. So Danielle, any more tips on help Nina not waste so much food? Oh, I think you're muted.
I'm sorry. One of my absolute favorites is just to really buy less in the first place. If you can force yourself to buy less, it can really open up some creativity for you, and buy less, but don't order takeout to make up for it. So, really try to use up what's in your pantry, what's in your freezer. A lot of times we put stuff in there and we forget about it. So buying less should encourage you to get a little scrappy and use up what you already have. And then my second one is to find a way to compost, whether it's learn how to do it in your backyard, work with a service like Midtown Composting that will come to your house and pick up your food scraps, or even go to your local government and encourage them or ask them to put in curbside compost pickup in your city or town. So both of those can really go a long way.
Where can you just cite for us, if you know off the top of your head, what municipalities do offer curbside composting at this point? Any?
Ann Arbor, I think, is one of the few. There are a few cities that offer drop-off. So Ferndale, Royal Oak. I should say Wixom is doing a pilot right now that lets you put food scraps in with their yard waste. So Wixom is also curbside. But Ferndale and Royal Oak for sure have drop-offs. Canton has a drop-off program. So in any of those cities, you can bring your food scraps to a drop-off location and get it picked up there.
Cool. Okay, and do you have any more tips for us?
Yeah, one of them was to do a holiday clothing swap with your friends. So lots of us want to wear like fun holiday clothes instead of going and buying something new. Get a bunch of friends together and do a holiday swap. And then my other one was like just like a super practical like thing for kids. I thought that would be fun to give. And there's a lot of age groups that this would work for. And I've done this personally and it worked really, really well, which is you can go to a thrift store, you can come to Arts and Scraps, you can use stuff that's already in your house and put together a bundle of stuff for a kid to invent their own board games. So it can be anything from like small plastic items that are fun. I like found a bag of like small plastic ducks. You can take old board games that you don't play anymore and just paint over whatever's branded for the game itself and just make it a much more generic board. You can do the same thing with old cards, things like that, so that the student can be really creative with their own ideas, but using stuff that you're not using anymore, or you can get really, really inexpensive at creative reuse places.
I love that idea. I want to see if you have any pictures of these board games. I want to see them. I think that's so brilliant.
I'll have to ask my nephew. He still uses it, and I gave it to him like 4 years ago. So
I just love that. Okay, Tessa, what about you?
A couple of tips. I would say skip the gift wrap. There are just so many like fun, creative ways. I always love all the fabric at Arts and Scraps, but even just like saving paper that you get or using paper bags. And you can always use like natural touches, like a little greenery or dried oranges or something to make it pretty. And my kids always used to really love, like coloring on the packages, and then it's kind of a meaningful gift in and of itself. And I guess the next one is if you participate in any like white elephant gift exchanges, to really encourage, I guess if you're hosting or maybe encouraging whoever's hosting to kind of make it either like everyone's bringing something that's secondhand or bringing something that's consumable, so that it's not just stuff ordered off the internet that it's going to be forgotten a few minutes later. So
yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, we have a lot of questions, but any of you that are watching right now, all you need to do to submit a question is to ask in the comments wherever you're watching. If it's on YouTube or on Facebook or wherever, just type a question in the comments and we will magically receive it, and we'll try to address it. And, not only if you have a question, but if you have a tip that you want to share, we would love to hear that too. So I'm going to go here into some of the questions that we received already, and then hopefully we'll get some more questions from those or tips from those watching now. So this question I think is for Danielle. How can all-you-can-eat kind of businesses control the amount of food waste by patrons? Is this something you've come across?
We just saw, someone just shared with me a hot pot restaurant in, I think, Madison Heights, that charges you by the pound if you over order, basically. So that could be a way to let people know ahead of time that if they do take too much or they do order too much and then just leave it behind, that they'll be charged. And the hot pot restaurant charges, I think, $13.99 a pound for.
Wow.
So you're paying twice. You're paying for ordering it, and then you're paying for not eating it, which I think is super cool, because that's the true cost of it. When you there's a cost to throwing food away, and that should be passed on. So I'd like to see more places doing that.
That's really interesting. Wow. Okay, our next question is, how do we shift the emphasis and accountability on waste reductions from individual consumers to large-scale waste producers? And I guess I'm really seconding this question because I feel like this all takes so much like energy and creativity, and sometimes I'm just not feeling that creative. Sometimes the world's just, a little too much for me that day. So it'd be nice if this was just easier to do for all of us. What are some of the ways that things you'd like to change? And that question's for anybody.
Well, I kind of alluded to this earlier. I do think that we need a better, deeper understanding of all four of the R's.
Which are, go through them again for
Oh,
us.
yeah, sure. Recycle, reuse, refuse, and reduce. And how we can be empowering businesses, whether it's corporations all the way to small businesses, on how to incorporate them into their business practices in ways that are good for the planet and good for them, because I do think that those solutions exist. But I think the other piece is that we have to vote with our dollars. And that was actually one of the tips I didn't go into. But really and truly, I think one of the ways we can make a difference on that grander scale, because I absolutely agree with Tessa that our collective action makes a huge difference. But I also agree with this question asker that, there are like forces outside of our control that are larger scale impacts. But talking to your government representatives about what you care about Michigan's energy plan, and all those different pieces, as well as advocating for the small businesses, organizations, et cetera, in your community that are making the difference at scale, or could be making a difference at an even greater scale with more support, can really move the needle. So if you're thinking about like really how can we move the needle on those bigger issues, the organizations already exist. I think we have some really wonderful organizations really doing the work, and I think we have, honestly, currently at least in our state, government that's ready to listen and implement things, but we do need that groundswell of support to really push for it.
Got it. Anybody else want to add to this? I know this is kind of a big
Yeah,
topic.
I agree. I agree, and it's like it's a yes and moment, right? Like that it's that our individual consumer actions can shape things, and that we want to make sure that we're active politically. Even just like the local government really matters. And I think when Danielle was talking about all the municipalities that are offering composting now, I'm quite certain that there were residents of those communities really encouraging and asking for that.
Right.
And so those, like attending local meetings, like city commission meetings, or finding if you're the city you live in has like a sustainability citizens group. Like those are wonderful ways to get started, because the local politics, everything kind of trickles up and trickles down, and it's important to be involved wherever you can.
Cool. All right, Danielle, did you want to add anything, or should I move on to the next question?
I was just say more of the same, so you
Okay.
can go on to the next one. We only have a little bit of time left.
All right. So I wanted to get to this question. This is a hard question, and I think it sparked our green room conversation about the Grinch, and not wanting to be the Grinch, but also wanting to just be more clear-eyed about what we're doing. And the question is, and I really want to know who sent this question in. How do we talk to kids about downsizing holiday gift expectations? We really just go crazy. I mean, my kids are big now. I don't know what to get them anymore, but yeah, we had some crazy Christmases. It was so fun to see them open up a million, boxes under the tree. But I really, look back at that and I think like, God, what message was I sending? And then they did it again at each grandparent's house. So, any thoughts on just, I don't know about downsizing, but maybe like right sizing or changing, some of the expectations for Christmas or holiday giving? Has anybody come across any thoughts around that, or messages, ways to talk to kids about it, alternatives?
I think, well, I mean, I can just speak like for my household, that we typically, like when the kids are kind of writing out wish lists, we have them write down like something you want, something you need, something to wear, something to read.
Ooh.
And it doesn't mean, because they also like are going to get stuff from grandparents, but that just is a kind of an easy way to start a conversation. for us about being thoughtful about what they're asking for, and that it's I don't know. I think it's like in the small moments of conversation, like just
Yeah.
talking about like what the holiday times mean in
Mm-hmm.
our family, or what traditions are important, or kind of incorporating like how they would like to give back. And so sometimes like part of writing that list is that, like, okay, well, what charity do you want to collect something for? And
Mm-hmm.
when I have my kids do that, I'm usually like, okay, I want you to be the one that goes to the store with me to get those things and then go drop them off, so that it's incorporated. But
Right, right. Can you
and then,
repeat those listings? Something you
oh,
need.
and I'm sure I'm stealing from
Yeah, yeah. That's
it's
okay.
probably a Nordic tradition, because I feel like they've mastered all of these things well. But it's something you want, something you need, something to wear, something to read.
Okay, I
So
love that.
I don't know. That kind of helps us like just start the conversation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Any other thoughts, Ange or Danielle?
Our family does something similar, but then we always say, like, but anything made is extra, right? So anything that you make can be extra in addition to that.
Uh-huh.
And then the other tip that I had, well, oh gosh, it just flew right out of my head. Was for the adults, just doing a Secret Santa exchange. Like, all the adults don't need to get all the adults something. If you're still
Amen to that.
exchanging
Oh
with
my
all the
God.
adults,
Yeah.
just having that conversation to say, like, let's all buy one gift for one other person, just to kind of eliminate some of the, you don't need, I mean, candles are nice, but do you need another candle? Things like that.
I do like
But
candles.
then, yeah, so, and then again, thinking about where you're buying, how are you voting with your dollar? What are you
Mhm.
buying that is maybe part of the reuse cycle, etc. But yeah, I was going to say the same thing as Tessa, which works really well, honestly. So.
All right, I think we're probably going to do one more question, then we'll wrap up. And this question is from a reader who says, as someone who's been trying to green up the holidays my entire life, it takes time, years, and leading by example in order to build comfort and acceptance from family and friends. What are some of the best ways we can influence those around us? And I'll just add, without making them just, really annoyed with us.
Yeah, I'm a total buzzkill at any event where there's food. They're like, "Oh God, now I gotta eat everything on my plate." Like, yeah, hi. It's we usually just we'll try to make jokes about it, but or bring your own to-go containers for leftovers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wish I had the magic answer to that. I know a lot of times when we go to family and friends' houses, they're still using disposables and ordering too much food. But over time, if they know that it's something that you care about, and they do tend to change. But it's you have to do it gently and lightly. You can't scold. You can't be too annoying about it.
Any other thoughts?
I would just add, do it with joy, right?
Yeah.
Like showing folks how happy it makes you to be able to incorporate those things into your life. Like,
Yeah.
if you're hosting your own thing, show that, like, just say, like, we're all gonna wrap and repurpose whatever, right? Make it fun. Whoever has the coolest wrapping will get a prize or whatever, right? Like, just helping people understand the joy that can be involved in these things. How being weird or different or whatever can actually bring so much to your life instead of feeling like the Grinch, right? And just sharing with people, like, this is why this means so much to me, because I'm part of this community at Walking Lightly, or I work with all these wonderful people, reusing food, or, I go to Arts and Scraps and meet all these cool folks, like, letting people know where that joy comes from and why it's important to you, not just the environmental impact, but also the community impact that you're part of, that you get to be part of when you're part of this environmentalism movement.
Yeah, the joy. Okay, I love that. All right, Tessa, do you have anything else to add?
No, I mean those are perfect, and I would like just kind of like a little piggybacking off what Anta just said. Like when I had some friends over for a birthday, and I was like, oh, I don't even have enough cups, so I just went and got this like random like really weird cups from the thrift store, and I was like, great, and take your cup when you go. Like, look, it's a party favor. But you know, I mean, it was like fun and weird and.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The solo cups. I mean,
Oh God, no.
the solo cups kill me. I mean, that's where, yeah, I love that. Take, go get some cups from the thrift store. They're cheaper than the solo cups, and people can take them home.
Mhm.
Or they'll just know it's theirs because, like, oh, mine was that really weird one that looked like
Right.
a cactus. Or, you know, we're not drinking out of somebody else's cup.
Love that. Love that. All right. Well, that is a wrap on our consumerism waste in the holidays webinar. I think we can do this without being Grinches. So thank you so much for all of your amazing tips. This will be available on our Facebook and YouTube channels to rewatch in perpetuity, and we'll also follow up with an email to you with a link to these and other resources mentioned. A few announcements before you go. Make sure you visit our website, planetdetroit.org, to check out our sustainable gift guide, including some things from Arts and Scraps and Walking Lightly. And if you do see something you like at Walking Lightly, on December 8th, Tessa's graciously offered to donate 10% of sales to Planet Detroit, which will be matched right now during Newsmatch between now and the end of the year. So that would be a great day to mark on your calendars, and hopefully you'll see me out there that day too. All right. Well, thanks so much to everybody for your time, your expertise, your dedication to this topic, and enjoy the rest of the day. And good luck on greening up your Christmas and your holidays.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks so much
you.
for having us.
Thank y'all.
Bye-bye.